Hello, welcome to my channel. So this is my first free piece of content that I've been putting out there regarding optimizing your Instagram account. So just a little bit of an introduction about me. My name's Kara. I am the blogger and human behind the Life and Style blog, A Kara Collective, based out of Arizona. I also work as a social media consultant and coach. And so here I am today going to share some information with you about one of my most requested platforms, Instagram. So I predominantly work in Instagram and Pinterest in terms of social platforms. And then I also work with individuals on their blog or websites, and then just kind of implementing social strategy and branding across platforms. But again, specifically Instagram and Pinterest. So today we're talking about Instagram with clients and just people in general, because my friends love to pick my brain about Instagram, regardless of how they use it, just for fun or for their business or really for anything. If they want to do something with their social media. Some of the biggest things that I'm always asked is, what can I do to grow? What can I do to make my Instagram better? Like, how do I make my profile better? How do I do this? Today we're gonna be talking about 30 specific actionable tips and challenges that you can do that are going to make your Instagram profile not just like better for optimization and growth, but in a way that is going to help elevate your presence. So when people find you or when people are checking you out, or just to get them to check you out, is they're gonna have a positive experience and it is going to be where you've always wanted your Instagram to be. Now, to be clear, these are just dipping our toes into some actionable steps. This is not the be all end all. If you are interested in coaching or consulting, I offer those services and you're more than welcome to reach out to me at akaracollective@gmail.com to learn more or check out my website. So before we get into things, I also wanted to say this is the first piece of free content. I will be adding more videos on here as well and adding these to blog posts and things like that. But if you are interested in learning more about specifically Instagram, Pinterest, and general branding and social media tips, tricks, and resources, I will be sharing a lot of those here. So go ahead and like and subscribe and be sure to follow along when I add more content. So first things first, in discussing an Instagram account, regardless of how you're using it, a lot of people want to understand what type of Instagram account they should have. So currently there's 3 different accounts. You can have just a regular personal account, which is what most users use, or you can have a business or a creator account. Now, the business account has been around for some time. This account is really for those of you who run a business or need tools that are going to help you grow and serve you as a business. So you have insights. This will allow you to see what your audience looks like, how many people in your audience are men versus women in percentages, what time of day do people like to come on, what day of the week do they like to come on and engage. These are all going to be generalized insights, and now these are typically broken down at a week or daily level and not necessarily specifically tied to content. So if you're not sure about business or creator, there is no preference given to any. Instagram has publicly said this. It doesn't really matter too much. One of the reasons people like the creator account is because it really breaks down insights even further, so you can see from a content perspective, you know, what specific piece of content has allowed you to grow, which specific piece of content maybe lost you followers, things like that. So the insights in the creator account are really meant to serve a creator, somebody who is looking specifically from content piece to content piece for more insights. Now, I always recommend at least starting on a business account. Additionally, if you want to utilize an outside source to automatically publish posts for you, I do recommend a business account, because I personally love using Tailwind, which is something I'll get to when I make a similar type of video for Pinterest. But Tailwind is an application you can use on your phone or your desktop, and it allows you to automatically publish as you schedule things without having to like check it off. Like a lot of other apps, you can schedule something, but you still have to like click a button to let it post. Tailwind actually will automatically post for you. It is amazing, especially if you are in a time zone that is not on East Coast or like Central Time. East Coast time is typically what Eastern Standard Time is what is utilized by most businesses in the world for whatever reason, at least in the United States, to figure out timing and like when business is happening and things like that. So I've particularly loved Tailwind. You do have to use the scheduling feature, have a business account. So if you're interested in switching things up, I do recommend the business account. You might be wondering why it matters to have a business or creator account and not just a personal account. So in a personal account, you actually don't really have access to insights. You can't see how you're growing, why you're growing, who's coming on, what your audience looks like, anything like that. In either of the business or creator accounts, you can. At the end of the day, if you want to be strategic in your social media strategy, or even just growing on social media, insights are king. Data is king. You have to be able to have those things. So if you're interested in growing, make the switch. Play around with it. You can switch back and forth quite a few times, I believe, but just make sure you have your hands on the data. Another thing you're going to want to do to optimize your Instagram profile is to type out your email in your Instagram bio. So you might be wondering, well, why would I do that? There's call to action buttons, and the call to action buttons are contact buttons. You'll predominantly see them on businesses, creators, anything like that, where it's like a little button at the top that says email, call. I think you can even like book appointments and things like that. The reason those are helpful, and you do want to utilize those, and we'll get into that later in another tip, but the reason you want to type it out, specifically if you're a creator looking to collaborate and just be more accessible, you want to type it out because unfortunately, as of right now on the desktop version, you're not actually able to access those contact buttons. There's no way to do that on desktop. So if you've ever worked in any industry in which you are looking at people's profiles on a desktop, you know how imperative it is to have that. If you don't have, having worked in influencer relations, if you do not have an email in there that I can copy and paste and reach out to you, it could be likely that I skip over you simply because I can't contact you, or because I have to go through this extra step. Now, at the end of the day, if you're a great fit, I will go through hell and high water to get your contact. However, this is just a way to make things easier for the user, make it easier for them to contact you, things like that. So go ahead and do it. It takes like 10 seconds to put it in your bio, and it'll be worth it. So one important part of engagement, and engagement is a huge, big thing on Instagram and just about any social media platform, but one thing that you are going to want to ensure you are doing is responding to all DMs and outstanding comments. Ideally, you're going to respond to these within the time that you're posting. So if you post at 10 a.m., let's say you're responding to these comments in the following hours or so. If you can't do that because, hey, life comes up and every now and then we miss them, or maybe a post from a while ago is finally getting some traction on it, or it's coming back and it's relevant or whatever reason, you're going to want to make sure you respond to these as close to in 24 hours as possible, simply to ensure that you're creating a consistency. If you're getting people to engage with your content, which if you're using a call to action, something we're going to get into later, you are wanting this behavior. You want comments, you want people to DM you, you want these things. If you want people to continue feeling comfortable doing that, you want to reward them with positive reinforcement by responding to them. Now, I do understand in this situation, every now and then we get some spammy DMs or creepy comments, and you don't want to respond to those. I think it is absolutely fine if you don't respond to them, but if you insist on doing so, just do so respectfully. You can even delete a message if it was requested to come into your inbox and perhaps they didn't follow you, or for whatever reason it came in as a request. It is okay to ignore those, especially if they make you uncomfortable. This is your space and you really should protect it. Now, this tip, setting up two-factor authentication, is going to seem like it really doesn't have much to do with having like a good Instagram account. However, I always bring this up because I can't even tell you how many times in the blogger space or in this industry, people's accounts have been hacked, they've worked for years to get their following, and now they have to start from scratch. I know nobody works that hard to get to that place, to have it just taken away from them, to accidentally click on a link that they demand your money or things like that. You do not want to be in that situation. So if you don't want to be in that situation, set up two-factor authentication. It's super easy. Instagram has put various steps in place to make sure that the only person who can access your account is you or someone you've given it to. So you're going to want to go into your settings and you're going to go through and set it up. You can set it up by having them text a specific code to you that the app will then ask you to put in. You can also use a third-party authentication app like Duo Mobile, which is what I use. I have both set up. And what it'll do again is in that app, it'll give you a specific code. You open it up and then you type it into Instagram, and that will let them know that you are the only person who has that code. And the great thing about Duo is it is used all over the place. Like when I was working at my old university, we used that. So lots of really high institutions trust it. I think it's a very valuable resource to have. And like I said, you don't ever want to work so hard as you do on your social media platforms to have it taken away from you. So take the couple minutes it takes to set this up. You will not regret doing it. So continuing on with engagement, an important thing that you're gonna want to do is setting up time to engage with the followers and audience you already have. I know a lot of times on the platform, it is so easy to just get wrapped up in thinking about, well, how can I grow and how can I get more and more and more? But one thing, if you know anything about recruitment, which at the end of the day, marketing and recruitment kind of go hand in hand, is that if you're getting more and more and more, but you're not loving on and working on retention of the audience you have, more and more doesn't matter because truthfully, you're actually not netting any growth at all. So a big part of having a healthy audience is ensuring that you have retention of that audience, right? It's like if you did a giveaway and then you gained 100 followers and then all 100 of them stopped following you, that giveaway may not have been very helpful because you didn't really change at all, right? It felt like you did and then you didn't. So when you're looking into these things of setting up that time to engage, make sure that you're doing that. I highly recommend doing it at least 20 minutes a day, but I understand for different accounts and different sizes and just different lifestyles. I know many people who run social media for their business or even a blog or anything like that. That is not the only thing you have going on in your life. And even though 20 minutes doesn't seem long, in the grand scheme of a day can be kind of hard to fit in. So if you can't do that, I do recommend doing it every other day and at least once a week. However, if you're only doing it once a week, it should be way more than 20 minutes. So the way you can do this is going through your list of followers, going in and just simply going through their photos, catching up with them just like you want to catch up with your friends, because at the end of the day, these people following you, they might not be your best friends, but they should be someone that you are interested in engaging with and being thankful for the fact that they're supporting you on your social media journey. So going in, liking their photos, responding to comments, commenting on their things, DMing them, engaging with them in stories and IGTV, different areas of the platform, it's going to help you maybe not grow your numbers, but it's going to make sure that you retain the numbers that you have and the humans that you have, because that's the whole point of this all, is growing community and keeping community. Okay, so the next tip that we're going to talk about is creating like branded templates on Canva or really any kind of website or app like that you can use to make sure that you are consistent across the board when you are creating graphic content. So this is something you don't have to do, but if you're looking to make people engage a little more on your stories or really build your visual brand, that is something that I do consulting and coaching on, and I actually am going to be having a branding bundle coming out really soon where I will get super in depth into that. But if you want to have engaging content on your stories or graphics in feed, you're going to want to use Canva or again, an app like it where you're using the same colors, the same elements, so like illustrations, images, sticker type things like that. So when people see it, of course they can see your username, but when they see it, they know it's you without really knowing it's you, if that makes sense. So you'll want to use this to maybe make this or that templates, to show your posts for the week, to link to people that you want to share about. These are just small, kind of little nods to your brand that are, one, going to be templates that will save you time and sanity, time and time again, but are also going to help people really start to create this visual in their head that they will start to associate you and your profile with. So if you're like most Instagram users, regardless of what you use it for, one of the hardest parts of putting your profile together is your bio. So people are never sure what they're supposed to put in here. Well, today in this little aspect that I want to talk about is optimizing your bio to share who you are and what you do. So if you're a business owner, in here you're going to want to talk about the things relevant to your business. You're going to talk about what it is your business does, who you serve, where you're located, or if you're an online digital business or service or e-commerce, you can talk about what types of products you have, what kind of lifestyle it is you cater to, things like that. If you're a blogger or creator or something more along those lines, you can share about who you are. And again, this is going to be relevant information. So your age might not be so relevant. Maybe the fact that you're a millennial might be, because maybe you're also speaking to a millennial audience. So you want to pick out pieces of your identity and what you share that is relevant. So you might even put a little descriptor of I am X and I help Y accomplish Z, X, Y, Z. Okay, I had to check on the letters, but That kind of thing is also helpful. This kind of mission statement of sorts is helpful to put. If you're a blogger, you might want to share, I love a, neutral aesthetic with touches of X, or maybe you're a travel blogger and you can put that you share, you could put where you're at now and where you're going next. You could say, travel guides, things like that. But really the key here is that you want to have pertinent information that at first glance, someone can really figure out who you are and what you share about. So even though they can look at your photos in that really quick 3 to 5 seconds people spend on a profile when they first come onto it, it's very easy for them to figure out, again, who you are and what you talk about. In terms of your profile as well in your bio, you're going to want to normalize a call to action. So you may see people in their bios put like link to biz resources below, and it'll point to their link. It might say, download my shopping guide below. Check out Christmas gift guides below. And those are call to actions. You are calling your audience to click the link. So that's one way you can do it in your bio. You can also do this in your stories by asking people to swipe up, check out a recent post, vote on a poll, ask you a question, anything like that, or in your content on your page in feed posts through your copy. So you can call a call to action in there. It could be as simple as, do you prefer X or Y? What are you doing this weekend? Where is the place you want to travel to next? Asking questions, asking them to comment, asking them to save it, asking them to share it, enter in a giveaway, enter in this contest, whatever that is, that's a call to action. So a call to action on paper, I think sounds kind of like, really salesy, really scary. It's not. It's just giving people a place to go, a thing to do, or something to think about. Call to actions are really important because it ups engagement, and it also helps you kind of gauge where that person is at and really helps you connect with them beyond just liking pretty pictures. Another form of engagement that you can do to really help your profile is to join a Facebook group. So again, has nothing to do with Instagram, but by joining a Facebook group, maybe it is other local wedding photographers. Maybe it's a Facebook group of local makeup artists. Maybe it is a Facebook group of local business owners. Whatever that is, these Facebook groups a lot of times, or any type of group platform that you're on, can be on LinkedIn, anything like that, is going to help you connect with other people in your industry, not just to support one another, but to also be inspired by one another and collaborate. The more often you can work in a community of like-minded people as yourself, you're going to be able to connect with people just like you with the same passions, and you're probably going to even be able to work together to provide even more value to your clients, your audience, your followers, whatever that is. So if you aren't on Facebook, go ahead and join. If you don't want to join Facebook, that's fine. There's all sorts of places online. Even on Instagram, you can join different groups, not engagement pods. We're going to get into why we don't do that, but you can start groups of people. Like, for example, there was, for a really long time, I was a part of an Instagram group chat where all of us were local Arizona bloggers, and so we would go with each other to events, or we would, if someone needed photos done, we would go help them shoot, things like that. So it's a way for you to connect with people and make sure that you are also sharing what you're doing, because at the end of it all, you're always going to be more successful the more you connect. Now, this next piece of engagement and content creation I'm going to talk about scares most people when they haven't done it before, or they don't have a background in video, and that is getting on Instagram stories. So if you've never gotten on Instagram stories, I challenge you after this video to do it. And Instagram stories can be a little intimidating because it can feel really weird at first to just talk to a camera, and it can feel kind of self-centered, and it can feel narcissistic, and it can feel a lot of things that just don't feel good right away. And it can even be funny. I mean, I don't know about you, but if you've ever listened to your own voicemail, you're like, my voice sounds like that, gross, right? And it's kind of in that vein. However, the more you get on Instagram stories, the more you can connect in another way with your audience. If you're not getting on stories, you are missing out of a huge and growing part of Instagram's platform. A lot of people recently, from some polls that I've done and seen across the board, is that some people actually don't even go in feed anymore on Instagram. They actually only go through stories. So if you're not showing up on stories, you're missing out. It can seem like I don't know what to talk about. Oh, I don't want to just talk about my coffee. I don't want to just talk about, oh, hi guys. Yeah, right. I understand that, and that's okay. I don't recommend just getting on stories to show your face and say hello and whatever. You should have some purpose. You should share some value. So if you're gonna hop on, I do highly recommend that you have something to share about. And it's totally okay to take notes. Sometimes when I have to get on my stories, I have a lot of stuff I need to share or get through, or I'm not really sure what to talk about. So I write down on a little sticky note just some ideas and things to talk about, checking in with people, asking how their week is going, sharing some exciting news that I might have, talking about what I've been doing that day. Anything that can serve value, anything that can connect with them, even if it's a kind of cruddy day and you're like, I don't know, this day's just so weird, I don't know what's going on. You're providing inspiration, education, connectivity, all of those things with your audience when you get on stories. So just know you don't have to be perfect, but showing up is better than not showing up at all. Outside of Instagram stories, another important way to connect with your audience and just other people in general is to follow other people. I know for a long time there was kind of this obsession with your follower to following ratio, right? Like you always want to have way more followers than you're following. And while that's kind of true, it's not really true. And it's kind of a vanity thing to say, oh my gosh, I have to have 1,000 more followers than I follow, because in the Instagram algorithm, that really doesn't do anything. Instagram's never said it does anything, and I'm really not sure that it has anything to do with much, right? The important thing in terms of your following is that the people you follow are inspirational to you. They are people that give you quality content. They're people that make getting on social media and on your timeline a joyful, positive experience. Now, I have to say, when you are going to follow these people in your industry, go follow them. I recommend at least 5. If you're going to just do this all today, recommend following 5 different people. And these are going to be people who are not just in your industry, but people who are not just like you. Maybe people who are different from you. Maybe people who are, and let's say you're a wedding photographer, maybe they are a senior portrait photographer. You guys are both photographers, right? But you do a little bit of different things. You can still support each other in the same ways. You can also follow people who don't look like you. It is so important to have a diverse feed, because if we only see and support people who look like us, we're really not helping our industries at all. In doing so, in supporting people in our industry, you're not just gonna build your community, but you're gonna build your network. If you ever have a situation where maybe you have a job, but you aren't able to do it because something comes up, you can then give that job to someone else. It's a way for you to connect, find a buddy to go to conferences with, find a friend who gets what you do. It is so helpful to have someone and create friendships and relationships, both professional and personal, that are based on what you do or what you want to do and your goals, because you get each other. So if you haven't yet, I really encourage you to follow at least 5 new people today that are in your industry or are people who inspire you. Now, outside of actually using the platform, there's all the stuff that we have to do behind the scenes to have a good Instagram profile. And part of that, if you are someone who enjoys being organized and you want to optimize your profile, it is important to have a content calendar. Content calendars not just help you stay organized and know when you're posting what and what it's about, but it gives you a space to really map out your month or even week at a time and look to see how things are gonna come out. So maybe if it's seasonal, right, it makes really a lot of sense to sit down and plan some seasonal content for that week or that month. Having a content calendar can help you space out your posts for the month and figure out posting what content on what days is going to be most helpful or least helpful, and it's going to help you stay organized and make sure that your content matches your availability. So if there's a big holiday coming up, you can ensure by having a content calendar that you're posting relevant information from you, your brand, or your business, or your blog on that holiday. Making sure that you're giving yourself time not to just have a content calendar, but chunking out time to update your calendar is super important as well. I personally work on my content calendar a month in advance and then make small tweaks a week before that content is meant to go live. This is going to be a formula that you have to figure out for what works for you based on how often you want to post, what type of content you're posting, the turnaround on content creation versus posting. There's a lot of pieces into that. And if you need more help with that, again, that's something I do coaching and consulting. But having a content calendar period is going to really help you alleviate some of those tensions that you have when it comes to putting out content on your website or your social media platforms. Along the lines of getting organized with a content calendar, writing out your captions in advance can really help streamline and make your content consistent, and especially make your brand voice consistent. So there's probably some people you follow who you really admire because you start to read a caption or a blog post and you're like, yep, this is them. Now, on the same end, you might also follow people where you're like, I feel like every day of the week I am listening to a new person. I don't really think their brand voice is consistent, and it kind of makes it hard to keep up with, right? Don't be that person. Now, don't get me wrong. Some people thrive in the chaos that is writing a caption right as a content piece is about to go live. I personally don't connect with that because I'm organized and I'm really type A and I'm type 1 and I love to have things laid out. But if you are someone who wants to wait a little last minute, the least I would say is to recommend writing out some bullet points for what you're talking about. So if it's a style post, you can say, okay, I'm talking about this outfit, this is the plug, this is what I'm doing. Give it like a little brief outline. Now, if you're more like me and you want to have the organization, I really recommend writing all your captions out in advance. When you do this, called batching, where you sit down and do one task at one time for an extended period of time, it's a little easier to just sit down and get them out there. That's what I do, that's what works for me, and that's what I recommend to most of my clients. But like I said, if that's just not really where you're at in your creative workflow, that's totally okay too. Try doing the outlines and see if that really helps you get your content strategy a little more on point, and overall will really help your overall profile. Regardless of where you're at in your Instagram journey, there are going to be times that you have new faces and new people come onto your little corner of the internet, and that is exciting. Don't miss an opportunity to reintroduce yourself every now and then. Now, depending on the growth rate of your account, you shouldn't be doing this every week, right? Like that would be weird to just be like, hi, this is me. Hi, this is me. Hi, this is me. And there's multiple ways to reintroduce yourself online. It can be an in-feed post. It can be on stories. You can personally message people and say, hey, I'm Kara. It's so good to have you here. Thank you for following along. I'm so excited to get to know you. You can do that as well. However, if you're gonna do an in-feed post, something I recommend doing about every quarter or so, depending on, again, your growth rate, you wanna just share something about you. And the biggest thing is encouraging the people who are engaging with this post to tell you something about them. Not only is this post helpful in them re-engaging and really figuring out who you are, and maybe even sharing some fun, maybe lesser known facts about yourself that you might not get from like the overall feel and content of your profile, but it's a great way to have a really engaging post and also to kind of figure out where your audience is at and where they're at in life, some of the things they're interested in, and maybe even some content you should be sharing more of. When it comes to having a good or optimized Instagram account, one of the #1 questions or kind of points of strategy I go through with clients is figuring out their usernames. Usernames, or handles on Instagram as they're commonly called, can be kind of hard to figure out. Personally, the top objections I get or concerns about usernames is maybe something's not available, is something professional, well, I'm not married yet and I might change my name. And then also, well, do I need to have a blog name? Like, oh my gosh, like what kind of blog name should I make? Because when you think about those things, especially the last one, it can be really hard to name your business if you don't already have a name picked out, or if you don't have a blog title picked out. It can be like really hard. So if you're trying to figure out your username, my biggest thing that I recommend, and honestly my go-to regardless of your industry, is to actually just use your name. Now, if you have a common name or you can look up your name on Instagram and you can see it's already taken, then I recommend looking more into a username route. So a Kara Collective came about because Not that I don't think Carolyn's was taken, but because it really embodied more of the type of content I wanted to share, which was a collective or collection of things that I love and passionate about, and just really what a collective of like a curated collective speaks to. Now, if you're kind of looking for kind of common phrases and words like that, that is something I've worked through with a lot of my clients. You can even go on Pinterest, and even Google has some pretty good resources on ideas for usernames. Now, if you're still not sure about that, another tip that I really like to talk about with usernames is before you change anything, start doing your searches. Look to see what's taken, look to see what's not, look to see if something is available, how easy is it to type. I know some people like to do where it's like their name and then an underscore and then their name and an underscore. That can be totally fine, but just remember, the more characters it has like that, the more complicated it can be to find. Overall, if you're having a really hard time figuring out your username or you're interested in changing it, give yourself time and grace to figure it out. Honestly, when it came to choosing my username, I used to just use my actual name, Carolyn's. When it came to choosing a Cara Collective, it was actually something that took me probably about a week to really get down to and figure out that I wanted. So don't rush yourself in this part of the process. It's gonna take time. However, if you see a username that you're thinking of and it is literally the only one available, you can go in and get the username to make sure you have access to using it. Another important tip or how to optimize your Instagram is going to come from the content you actually share. So one resource that I always use with clients, and I'm actually making available to you guys for free. If you get to this point in the video, there will be a link for you to click down below and you will have access to this worksheet that I use with all of my clients if we're talking social strategy. And this strategy is all about content buckets. It is essentially what I call any type of genre, topic, or niche of type of content you're going to share. So for example, if you are like me, a life and style blogger who also shares a little bit of my business, I have 5 pillars of content or content buckets that I share. When I go to figure out my content for the month, I look to make sure that I speak to all 5 aspects of these in my social media content, because if I don't, I'm not really serving my audience, right? So the content bucket worksheet is really there to help you figure out what 5-ish. You can do a little less. I don't recommend too many more, but essentially the magic number of 5 pillars or content buckets of genres, niches, or topics that you're going to discuss. Now, to be clear, these are the general topics. For example, travel would be a content bucket, and then inside that would be US road trips, packing lists, trip itineraries. Does that make sense? So those things within the bucket are going to be a lot more specific, whereas the title or genre, niche, or topic of the bucket, the content in that bucket, or the overall arching theme is going to be a larger, more general concept. Now, when it comes to the content you've already created, and let's say you've been on stories and you have highlights. If you aren't aware, highlights are going to be the saved story videos that appear in the little circles on your Instagram profile. When you are using these, you want to save information that is useful and relevant to your audience. Now, you might save videos there a lot, but how often do you go through and clean them up? I have to say, most people, myself included for a long time, did not even consider this in the Instagram platform part of the admin or behind the scenes work. It is so important, at least quarterly or seasonally, that you go in and you go through your highlights and remove from them the content and information that is just really not relevant anymore. Because at the end of the day, you want your highlights to be the highlights of what you're sharing on stories that people can access quickly and get information that is going to be relevant to them at the time. Now, if you're not sure about changing your username, one thing you can do to help your profile come up a little more often in SEO, the very basic SEO or search engine optimization that Instagram has, is next to your name, not your username, but your name on your profile, to put a keyword or phrase that is relevant to what you're sharing. So for example, mine could be Cara social media consultant, or Cara Arizona lifestyle blogger, or Cara travel blogger, right? For you, that could be your name, wedding photographer, or name, Arizona blogger or anything similar. The key here is that these words may help you come up or should help you come up a little quicker and higher depending on what someone is searching. However, and the major key here is whatever keyword you put here has to be relevant and actually connect with what you share. If you put wedding photographer and you're actually a social media specialist, people are going to come to your account thinking they just like landed their wedding photographer and are going to be not very happy to find out that that's actually not what you do. So whatever keywords you're using, make sure that that is relevant to your content. So from the beginning, you are creating a positive user experience for anyone who comes to your profile. So similar to what we've previously said about following 5 accounts or individuals that are in your niche and industry is going to be the same, but with hashtags. So a lot of people don't know this, but you can actually follow a hashtag and in your feed, you'll get the posts from people who use that hashtag. Again, this is incredibly useful in your industry for a lot of different reasons. 1, you get inspired. 2, you can see what's trending. 3, you can learn what maybe isn't working. 4, it's gonna help you do market research that you don't have to pay for. So with that last bit, I think is one people get a little confused on. So with the hashtag, for example, let's say, again, I love using the wedding photographer example. I don't know why, but that's what always comes to mind, is a wedding photographer. If you follow Arizona wedding photography, you can follow that and see what's working. Perhaps you will come across a profile that is running a certain special that seems to be doing really well, or they have a location that is working really well for them. You just found these things out without having to go look at locations. You just found these things out without having to run a sale and have it flop or be successful. You just learned something without having to do much work on your own. So that's not to say go snatch and steal in intellectual property. No, we don't do that. But it is a way for you to conduct market research, see what's trending, see what's popular, and get inspired to create content in that vein to help you succeed and do more of what is working for other people too. Now, while we may follow some things to get inspired, it's also important to unfollow things that don't work for us anymore. It can be really hard to unfollow accounts. Sometimes you feel kind of guilty. I think a lot of times, depending on where you're at in your journey on social media, it still feels very personal, like, oh my gosh, like I went to school with them or I work with them or whatever that may be. I really want to empower and encourage you that if somebody is not serving you or is creating an experience on social media that is not uplifting to you, now, I'm not saying people who make you uncomfortable because they make you think and they make you learn and they make you have tough conversations. I'm saying the people who maybe you're really negative and that just aren't serving you, or somebody whose values don't align with your own. It is okay to unfollow them. It's also okay to remove followers from your account. Now, this is something that can feel really counterintuitive, and this is kind of like a bonus tip in this vein, is that on your list of followers, it might seem like it's better to have 4,000 followers than 3,000 followers, but I really want to put it into your mind this way. Is it better to have 4,000 followers and only 3,000 of them engage with you, so you have a lower engagement rate, you're not getting as much you're not getting as much traction on your posts, not as many people are seeing them because your engagement rate's lower, so Instagram thinks your stuff isn't good, right? Or is it better to only have 3,000 followers who all 3,000 engage with you, all 3,000 show up for you, all 3,000 are loving on you and pushing you to the forefront of the algorithm? You're probably going to say it's better to have 3,000, right? Instagram is really at a place right now, and I kind of hope to continue to see this, that it is about quality over quantity. So when the platform first started, it was like followers, right? That's why the follow for follow thing was a thing. That's, a lot of those things that we don't do anymore were huge. But we're just not about that anymore. So it is okay to go through your following list and remove people who aren't your ideal follower, aren't engaging with your content, or are just dead accounts that maybe someone forgot the password to and hasn't been using in 2 years. That's not gonna hurt you. It is only going to help you. Yes, your numbers will be lower, but long term, I promise, this will help your profile so much. Now we're getting to the end of the tips, and one thing I want to talk about here is to learn to take a break. If you're starting out on social media, it is very overwhelming, especially on the Instagram platform. Because here's the thing, just like a lot of parts of life, it feels like you need to be on all the time. You've got to be working all the time. You've got to be on stories. You've got to do the perfect caption. You've got to have the perfect photos. And it just ends up burning you out. Learn to take a break. If you are starting out on social media, or if you've been here for a while and you're looking to make some changes, I couldn't recommend more setting a day that you do not post or you don't get on. Now, you might be like, oh my gosh, but my followers, what are they gonna do? It's so scary. I promise you they'll be okay. Because if you can encourage yourself to take a break and encourage them to take a break, everyone's gonna be fine. Everything's gonna be okay. You cannot pour from an empty cup. I'm sure you've heard that phrase, and if you haven't, really think about it. And that's something that I've been trying to do as well, especially when you do this as a job. You are on all the time. Give yourself grace, take a break. It'll make sure you don't burn out and will serve you long term. I promise you can live not being on the platform for a day. So rounding out this optimization of your profile, one thing we haven't really talked about was the link in your bio. So the link in your bio can hold so much information. If you don't have a link in your bio, let's get you one. Literally, let's get you one. If you are a business, this is essential. It needs to link to your website. If you don't have a website, we can get you a website. If you want to be a blogger, you'll put your blog there. If you are an influencer, you might put a link to your other social platforms where people can connect to you. You might link them to where you share your outfits that they can shop, different things like that. Now, when it comes to your bio, you want to use a smart bio. If you're someone who is changing out the link every single day, every other day, you actually might get your account flagged for spam because you're constantly changing that, and it can be a little difficult for Instagram to gauge whether or not the links to which you're sending it, because you're changing it so much, are legit or if they're spammy. So to work around this, what you're going to want to do is to create a smart bio, which you can do through Tailwind, or a link tree, which you can use Linktree for, or if you actually already have a website, you can create a landing page that is set up with links to all your content. And the bonus of doing that one is that they're already on your website, so navigating around and checking out is going to help you even more. Yes, it's going to drive numbers, it's going to drive traffic. I have to say, after using both Smart Bio and Linktree, my #1 bio so far that I've recently implemented is on a landing page on my own site, and it has paid dividends. So if you're looking into doing this, it's really simple. Just set up a landing page, add some links, some photos, things like that that are relevant that you want to have a call to action for in your content or your bio, and just put that there. This way people can connect with you, and it's going to make your call to actions even more seamless. So we've already mentioned insights and analytics a bit, but we actually haven't talked about them much. So a huge tip if you're trying to improve your profile and your presence, especially on Instagram, is to go into your insights and check them out. See who your audience is, see where they're from, see what times they're active, see what their interests are, look and see, what their general age is. Knowing your insights in the audience demographic section are going to help you better talk to these people. If most of your people are your age, you're probably going to be able to connect with them a little better. If people are a different age than yourself, it's going to push you to maybe learn more about them, their life experiences, where they're at, their complications, their obstacles, their things that they're excited about. That is going to help you speak to them more in your content. Outside of audience insights, there's also going to be content insights. So here you can look to see what posts or videos are getting the most likes. You can see which ones are getting the most shares. And from here, you can look at that content and see how you can replicate it. Let's say your #1 liked post was where you gave 10 tips on whatever your niche is about or whatever your industry is. If that's your most liked post, try putting out another post with 10 tips or something that's educational. That's something that is helpful to whoever your audience is. If that does well again, you're starting to see this trend and learn that, okay, educational content does well here. And then you can start creating content that people are consuming, that people are enjoying. And the more you do that, the more successful your platform is going to be. A lot of times insights and the analytics can be pretty scary and kind of hard to understand. So if that is something you have questions about, feel free to comment below and we can kind of chat about that. Or I can even create more resources to get into what all those things mean. But make sure you're looking at them. To have them all there freely available and to not look at them, you're kind of losing out. So go ahead and give them a look, see what makes sense, see what doesn't. Let me know. Now we talked about cleaning up our highlights already. Another thing I want to talk about is updating our highlight covers so they match our branding and that they're consistent with our page. You might notice some people who don't put like a cover on theirs and it's just a picture of the video or the image. And those can look a little funky. Now, for some people that's their aesthetic and that's what it's gonna be, but if you do have a brand image, if you do have a branding style on your page, I can only recommend you go in Canva and create a couple highlights. You can do this by having them be similar colors, you can add icons, you can add words to explain what's on them. Anything that you wanna do, it is totally up to you. The most important thing about these though is that they are consistent. So you wanna make sure that they match together as a cohesive highlight set, and then you also wanna make sure that they make sense with your brand and the types of images you share. So for example, if you share mostly a neutral feed, and then let's say your highlights are all this like aquamarine blue, that's like probably not gonna make sense and be kind of like different, right? However, let's say that you made them a nice neutral color, then they would match perfectly with your feed. So look to that visually, and also make sure that when in the descriptions of your highlights, when you're updating them, that they really speak to what that content is about and it's very clear. It can be very tempting to use emojis because they're cute, but if it's not super obvious what the highlight is about, it's not being helpful to your audience. So make sure you're optimizing that way as well. Another thing you can do to help optimize your profile is to either create or tweak the hashtag list you have. So hashtags are a real hit or miss for most people. I know that their ability to work wonders is based on a lot of factors, some of which are not always in our control, and that can be really frustrating. But if you aren't using hashtags, do look into using them. They could serve you greatly and get your content in front of way more people that it wasn't in front of before. If you are using hashtags, now is a really important time to reassess what's working and what's not. Some general tips on hashtags would be this. If you're using hashtags that have millions of people using them, you're gonna get lost in the feed. Frankly, there's very little point in using them because you're not gonna come up on that explore page or that hashtag page, so don't use those. A really safe bet is using a couple of hashtags that are bigger size, so around 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 maybe. Using some that are more in the middle, so 70,000, 60,000, 50,000, and then using some really niche specific ones. So again, if you're a wedding photographer, you might use some big ones like wedding photographer. A smaller one might be like Arizona wedding photographer, and then a niche one would be like maybe you work with particular types of brides. So maybe you work with brides or grooms who want to have their photos done outdoors, or maybe that they want to have it in a historical setting, something like that that is just really niche and really specific to what you do and who you serve, and then that would be a smaller hashtag. So you want to have some varying levels. Additionally, it used to be that you could use 30. You still can use 30, but there are some indications that using 30 can be a little spammy. So aiming between 5 and 15 I think is a really sweet set of numbers to aim for when you're doing your hashtags. The last tip I will give about hashtags is that if you have them and they match your image, there's a new aspect of the Instagram algorithm that matches image to your copy and your hashtags. So if you are, let's say, wearing a white dress and you use hashtag white summer dresses, that's a good indicator between the two to the algorithm that, okay, these hashtags are not spam, they have to do with the image, check, check, we're good to go. Now again, this has not totally been confirmed. However, from my own use and other people's uses, both clients and friends, there does seem to be a little bit of a correlation. So if you're curious, I would recommend giving this a try. It's probably not gonna hurt. All right, so the second to last tip we're gonna be talking about here is using a preset. Now, the number one request I get to Instagram profiles is how to make a cohesive, stunning, beautiful feed. This is not easily accomplished, and I am very much so planning on either creating an ebook or course surrounding this topic because I get so many questions on it. To give a little bit of insight on an aspect of that, which is having a preset or a filter, you might know it as, to make sure all your images look similar, right? You can go on someone's page and you might not know that it's a preset, but you can tell that their images are all edited the same way, or that they're not edited the same way at all, or maybe just not edited. Now, you do not have to use a preset to have beautiful images. However, they really help elevate them, they help them be more pleasing to the eye, and they help you create a visual brand that is not just recognizable, but it's more like consumable, it's more binge-worthy. Like you want to keep looking at all these photos. You'll notice people who you do probably follow and admire quite a bit, they've gained a lot of traction, probably use the same types of presets. Now a trick that I learned is if you don't want to use the same preset, the trick is to use the same temperature. Now if you're new to photo editing, you might not be sure what I'm talking about, but essentially when you go in to edit a photo, you can edit it in its temperature to be either more warm or more cool. So typically it'll be like red or blue. Now when you go red, it's like everything's looking orange and red and bright and tan and really warm and cozy, right? That's something maybe you would use more in certain seasons, whereas the cool tones are gonna look a little more subdued, a little more cool, not quite as rosy, things like that, and can even come off as blue because you're going cooler on the tones. Doing that is a way to use a different preset every time, but to make sure that there's still a consistency in temperature. If you are really not sure about presets or you're trying out a bunch, make sure you're implementing the temperature trick to make sure that things look cohesive. All right, and then the very last tip that I'm going to give to optimizing and creating a better Instagram profile and platform is going to be about conducting an Instagram audit. Now, an Instagram audit is a way to mesh visual, branding, both visual and messaging and copy. It's going to be a way to look at your optimization and your data to see where your profile is at. If you don't know how to conduct an Instagram audit, on my shop online at Akira Collective, there is an Instagram audit template checklist you can purchase. With that is going to be a video that you will watch and follow along as you fill it out to prompt you, give you tips, resources, and insights as you're doing it. Now, Instagram audits are so essential, and you honestly have to do them either quarterly, twice a year, or every year, again, depending on your industry, your growth, and things like that. But they're gonna help you figure out some really important elements to your profile. One of these is to see what's working, right? We always want to see what's working so we can continue to do those things. It's also going to help point out to us what is not working or some gaps that we can fill and really focus on. If you've ever been in school, one of the best tips I ever got about studying was to look and see what your grades were. If you are taking 5 classes and you have A's in 2 of them, and then B's in 2 of them, and then you have a C in another class, it makes a lot of sense to spend a lot more of your time focusing and studying on the class that you have a C in than it does spending all your time studying for everything, including the 2 classes you have an A in. The same kind of philosophy is gonna apply to social media and especially your Instagram account. If you can look at your account and you can see that your copy is doing really well and your images are doing really well, but your engagement on stories isn't really good, you can go and see, okay, I'm gonna focus on my stories, or I'm gonna focus on my photo quality, or I'm gonna focus on my consistency. In doing these things, you can really develop a strategic social media plan on Instagram that's gonna help you do better and not feel burnt out because you're really trying to do a million things, when in reality, you just need to keep doing what you're doing well and put more time and focus and effort into those things you need to work on. Alright, so that concludes today's video of 30 tips and tricks to both elevate and optimize your Instagram profile. I hope you found it helpful. Now, if you have any questions, we covered a lot of information, but if you have any questions, curiosities, anything like that, feel free to drop them below in the comments. If you want, you can even personally message me over at Instagram at Akira Collective. If you're interested in following along on other social platforms, you can also find me on Pinterest at Akira Collective, and of course there is my website, akiracollective.com. It's so great to have you all here. Thank you so much for following along with the video, and I can't wait to be back next time. Have a good one.